was around 3 in the morning when the sudden soft whimper from Jack, my loyal but usually silent German shepherd, jolted me awake. My heart skipped a beat as I tried to decipher the darkness that engulfed my bedroom. Jack's uneasy movements at the foot of my bed were unusual, his low growls mingling with anxious whines. Why was he acting so strangely? The stillness of the night seemed to amplify every sound, making Jack's distress all the more unsettling. I reached out to calm him, my hand brushing against his coarse fur. He wasn't just restless, he seemed genuinely frightened. What could possibly terrify such a brave dog? I listened closely, trying to catch any unusual noise that might have disturbed him. There was nothing but the usual silence of our remote countryside home, yet Jack continued to whimper, his body tensing with every sound. Suddenly there was a faint scratching sound coming from downstairs. Jack's ears perked up, and he bolted out of the room before I could even sit up. My pulse raced as I followed him. Grabbing the flashlight from my nightstand, the wooden floorboards creaked under my feet. As I descended the stairs, each step echoing ominously in the quiet house. Jack was already at the front door, his nose pressed against the gap, his growls growing louder and more menacing. The scratching became clearer, more deliberate, as if someone or something was trying to get in. I tightened my grip on the flashlight, my other hand ready to grab anything that could be used as a weapon. Was it a burglar? Or perhaps some wild animal attracted by the scent of food? I couldn't let my guard down, not with Jack so agitated and the safety of my home at stake. As I reached the last step, Jack suddenly stopped growling and turned to look at me, his eyes wide with what I could only interpret his fear. It wasn't like him to back down from a threat. I edged closer to the door, my heart pounding in my chest, the flashlight's beam trembling slightly in my shaking hand. Whatever was out there, Jack and I were about to face it together over the next few days. Jack's behavior grew increasingly bizarre each night. Like clockwork, he would start whimpering around the same time, always fixated on the front door. During the day, he seemed normal, but as dusk fell, a visible change came over him. His ears would twitch at the slightest sound, and he would often stare at the corners of the rooms, as if watching something move around us, that I couldn't see what was going on with him. Was it possible he was sensing something I couldn't determine? To get to the bottom of this mystery, I decided to stay up and monitor any activities that could be triggering his anxiety. Armed with my flashlight and a cup of strong coffee, I settled into the armchair by the living room window. Jack curled up tensely at my feet. The hours ticked by slowly with every creak and whisper of the wind, sending a chill down my spine. It wasn't until past midnight that I noticed the shadows under the back door shift unnaturally. My grip on the coffee cup tightened as a chill ran through me. Was I imagining things? Or was there something moving out there? Jack seemed to notice it too. He was on his feet in an instant, growling lowly, his stance defensive. I couldn't tell what was more frightening, the thought of confronting an intruder, or the unnatural shadows that seemed to play tricks on my eyes without thinking. I grabbed the flashlight and swung the back door open. Jack barking furiously by my side. The backyard was bathed in moonlight, empty and eerily quiet. As I scanned the area, my light caught something small and white, pinned under the bushes. I approached cautiously, Jack's barks turning into whines as we got closer. It was a torn piece of fabric looking suspiciously like a part of a glove. How did this get here? Who was lurking around our house? And more importantly, why? My mind raced with questions as I pocketed the fabric. A growing sense of unease settling over me. Something was very wrong, and I needed to figure it out soon for both our sakes. The next morning, I decided to take the mysterious piece of fabric to the local police station. The officer on duty, a kind-faced man named Officer Daniels, listened intently, As I recounted the strange occurrences of the past few nights, he examined the fabric closely, his brow furrowing in thought. "We've had a few reports of burglaries in the area recently," he revealed, causing a knot of worry to form in my stomach. Could someone have been casing my house? And Jack was alerting me all this time, feeling a mix of relief and anxiety. I thanked Officer Daniels and headed home with Jack, who seemed unusually calm, as if understanding that we were getting help that night. I took extra precautions, securing all the doors and windows before settling in for another vigil. This time I set up a camera facing the front and back doors, hoping to catch anything unusual. It wasn't long before the soft scratching started again, this time followed by a faint tapping. Jack perked up his ears, twitching in alert. I reviewed the camera feed, my heart racing as I noticed a shadow moving at the edge of the port. The figure was barely visible, a dark silhouette against the night. Suddenly the shadow paused and seemed to look straight at the camera before disappearing. My breath caught in my throat. This had to be the intruder, determined to protect my home. I called the police and showed them the footage. The officers arrived, quickly canvassing the area and finding signs of attempted entry at the back door. Jack barked loudly, his tail wagging as if proud to have been right all along. The police were able to collect fingerprints from the scene, which eventually led to the arrest of a suspect linked to other local crimes. The resolution of the mystery brought a sense of peace to our home. Jack returned to his usual self, no longer whimpering at night, but rather sleeping soundly by my side. The bond between us grew stronger, a silent acknowledgement of the ordeal we had overcome together. I learned to trust his instincts implicitly, grateful for his protective presence. Jack wasn't just a pet. He was my guardian, my loyal friend who had stood watch over me during those unsettling nights. The sense of safety was short-lived. However, as just a few days later, the tension unexpectedly returned. It was a quiet evening, and Jack and I were settling down for the night when he suddenly stood up, his body stiffening as he stared towards the front door. The familiar sense of dread washed over me. Hadn't the police caught the intruder? Why was Jack acting up again without warning? The sound of shattering glass from the kitchen pierced the silence, and I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. This wasn't just an attempt. Someone was inside the house grabbing a baseball bat. I moved cautiously towards the sound, Jack growling. Lowly beside me as we reached the kitchen, I could barely make out a figure rummaging through the drawers. "Who's there?" I shouted, my voice echoing through the quiet house. The figure turned, and in the dim light I saw it was a young woman barely in her 20s, looking more scared than threatening. "Please don't hurt me," she stammered, her voice trembling. Jack barked loudly, but he didn't advance. As if sensing my confusion and the lack of real threat from her, I lowered the bat, taking a step back. "What are you doing in my house?" I demanded, trying to keep my voice steady despite the adrenaline rushing through me. She broke down, sobbing her story, pouring out in a rush. She was homeless, she said, and hadn't eaten in days. Desperation had driven her to break in, thinking the house was empty. My anger softened as I listened to her. I couldn't imagine the desperation that had driven her to this, telling Jack to stay. I went to the kitchen and made her a sandwich, her gratitude evident in her watery eyes. I called the police, but instead of pressing charges, I asked them if they could help her find a shelter. Watching them take her away, I felt a mix of relief and sadness, pondering the societal gaps that led to such incidents that night. As Jack and I sat in the quiet of our now secure home, I reflected on it was a stark reminder of the world's harsh realities and the unexpected situations one can find themselves in. Jack snuggled closer, his presence a comforting reminder of the uncomplicated loyalty and love he offered. No matter the complexities of human actions, his instincts had protected us once again. But this time they had also opened my eyes to the struggles of another. This ordeal had not only tested our resilience, but had expanded my empathy forever, altering how I viewed those around me in distress. After the incident with the young woman, life gradually returned to normal, but the experience had left a lasting impact on me. I found myself more alert, more aware of the sounds and shadows of my own home, and deeply appreciative of Jack's vigilant presence. His loyalty and protective instincts had not only safeguarded our home, but had also guided me through a complex moral challenge. I felt a renewed sense of connection to my community, moved to contribute positively wherever I could. One evening, while Jack and I were on our usual walk through the neighborhood, I noticed a new flyer at the community board. It was an announcement for a neighborhood watch program, looking for volunteers to help keep our community safe, inspired by recent events. I signed up without hesitation, eager to give back and help others feel as secure as Jack made me feel. The community meetings introduced me to many of my neighbors, some of whom had experienced their own troubles and were equally eager to contribute to our collective safety. We shared stories and strategies, and I found a sense of camaraderie that I hadn't realized I was missing. Jack was a hit with the group. His story, a perfect example of the difference one can make with vigilance and a caring heart. As the program got underway, I felt a profound shift in my outlook. No longer was I simply a resident in my town. I was an active participant in its safety and well-being. The fear that had once felt so constricting began to ease away, replaced by a strong community-driven purpose. One night, as I sat on my porch with Jack at my side, I looked out over the quiet streets, comforted by the knowledge that we were all looking out for each other. The bonds formed in recent weeks had not only made our neighborhood safer, but had also enriched my life with meaningful relationships and a deeper understanding of the power of community. As Jack lay his head on my knee, I knew that no matter what challenges we might face in the future, we weren't just watching out for ourselves. We were part of a larger network of care and support, guarding each other's backs. In the soft glow of the evening, I felt an immense gratitude for my four-legged friend who had led me here, his simple act of vigilance, weaving us more tightly into the fabric of our community. If you enjoyed my story, please like this video and subscribe my channel for more stories.